This is Ralph Smart.
Woo! Breathing in that good ass prana, baby.
He's a self-described psychologist from the UK, he's published several self-help books, and his YouTube channel, Infinite Waters Diving Deep, has close to 2 million subscribers. On his channel, Ralph gives daily talks about how his viewers can manifest their dreams and work on becoming their own greatest version.
Become your greatest version, baby.
Ralph seems like a nice enough guy, and although this video is going to be critical, I don't intend to criticize him in particular, at least not in a way that singles him out or stakes any claims about his character. We're starting with Ralph because he makes for a good case study. Ralph's message is one that seems intended to help people empower themselves and improve their lives, but unfortunately there are some harmful implications if you read between the lines of what he's saying. On the one hand, you've got innocuous stuff like this.
First and foremost, you have to remind yourself we never attract what we want. We always attract what we are. I wish more people knew this. That the energy you put out there is the same energy you will receive back. There is no free lunch pass in the universe. You gotta do the work, baby. Let go of that fear, because fear blocks your manifestation.
If you're a materialist, you may be rolling your eyes a bit, or a lot, but depending on who's listening, these clips of Ralph probably either sound inoffensively kooky or sort of generally motivating. But then there's stuff like this.
You're not poor, you're just lazy. I chose this life, and you chose that life. Wealthy people provide value for other people. You're not poor, you just have a poor time management.
So, that's a little yikes, right? Ralph's spiritual beliefs inform what he's saying here, and a big part of most forms of spirituality is compassion. But blaming poor people for their poverty doesn't sound too compassionate, does it? Hi, my name's Sarah, and this is Culture Kaleidoscope, a show where we look deeply at culture and media with special attention to the subtleties. Now, I'll be the first to point out that the clips you just saw were taken out of context, and I will be representing Ralph's points more fairly in a bit, but I wanted to start out by highlighting the troubling aspects of what he's saying. He may be coming at it from a less mainstream direction, but we can think of what Ralph's saying as a reproduction of the myth of meritocracy. The idea that our economy is structured fairly so the most deserving people will succeed, while those who struggle are having a rough time because they're undeserving in some way. According to Ralph, if you put the work in and devote yourself to serving others, financial success will inevitably follow. Conversely, if you aren't achieving financial success, it's because you're not trying hard enough or there's something that you could be doing better. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it seems like Ralph is a believer in individualism. Individualism is a central ideal in many Western cultures, and there's a lot of great things about it. It can encourage feelings of personal empowerment and help people believe they can transcend their circumstances, the belief being a prerequisite to actually doing it. The issue is, though, that the politics that align with these ideals are neglectful at best and exploitative at worst. To be an individualist, you have to be okay with being deeply selfish in some ways, or at least unaware of your own privilege and/or luck compared to people who actually have fewer opportunities and resources. I would locate Ralph and his content within the New Age spirituality movement. It's a movement that's been referred to as secular spirituality, meaning that its participants believe in the concept of souls and divinity, but don't have a holy text or follow any particular religious dogma. There may be no New Age Bible, but that doesn't mean there isn't an unwritten ideology. Unfortunately, aspects of that ideology are actively harmful to certain groups of people, and in particular, the economic underclass. When I write a script, I like to take some time to think about who my intended audience is. Many of my current subscribers found me via a popular leftist creator, so I know that for now, it's mostly you folks that I'm writing for. For you folks, this video will give you a peek into the ideological mechanics of a subculture you may have glimpsed, but that many of you probably have never been a part of. My hope is that my video can help you understand why some of the stuff they say might strike you as weird or problematic, and also help you figure out how to constructively interact with them. Because the thing is, I think these people could become our allies. At the same time, though, I'm hoping that some New Agers will find this video and decide to hear me out. If that's you, hi, welcome. I want you to know up front that while I don't consider myself a part of it anymore, I have been inside the New Age community. Actually, we probably believe a lot of the same things. I'm making this video because I think that New Age ideology leads to a lot of emotionally, morally, and spiritually correct conclusions. But I also think that it has a glaring blind spot. For you New Age folks who may have found this video, my intention is to present my criticisms clearly and non-judgmentally in the hope that you'll consider them. This topic is a really complex one. There's a lot of different perspectives to view it from, and I think that several are valid. We're dealing with something really sensitive here, and that's people's beliefs. If you think about it, when a person believes something fully, it becomes subjectively real to them, and I think that's a reason to take it seriously. It's important to bring in what we may consider objective reality to temper that perspective sometimes, but there are certain things that objective empirical reality can't quite pin down for sure. One of those things is the concept of God, and that's a concept we're evoking whenever we discuss the subject of religion or spirituality, as we are today. A lot of people on the left, I find, are either vocal atheists or refrain from speaking publicly about their metaphysical views, and I can understand why. A lot of leftists pride ourselves in our awareness of objective reality, as some people on the right do too, by the way, but we're not talking about them today. Leftists often, by definition, focus on material reality, the social and economic structures that observably empirically exist, and which make life demonstrably empirically harder for certain people due to things about themselves they didn't choose and can't control. We also align ourselves with science. Science that shows us that COVID is real, that wearing masks help stop the spread, that the vaccine is both safe and the best chance we have at moving past it, and also that climate change is real. That's all important, but I think it's equally important to keep an open mind to things that science doesn't yet fully understand, like the phenomenon of consciousness and the concept of God by extension. I think that some New Age attitudes are misguided and that the neglectful ignorance they perpetuate is harmful, but I don't intend to criticize their core beliefs or even cast them in doubt in any way. Let me come out of the closet here. I'm not an atheist. It feels weird to admit that as a leftist, but there you have it. I used to be one when I was younger, and I totally understand the mindset. Skepticism is natural and healthy, and it's reasonable to understand that there's no proof God exists, and therefore decide to live as if God doesn't exist. I won't get into the experience that changed my mind right now, but something did, and yeah, I believe in something now. I don't want to call it God, but it's something, and for a while, New Age ideology felt really intuitively correct to me. The core beliefs make sense, but I feel they need to be tempered by a dose of realism. It might be a good idea to start out by defining some terms. New Age spirituality as a concept is actually pretty ill-defined and broad, and I'm only using it out of necessity, for lack of a better term. It's been used to refer to both established new religious movements and contemporary pop spiritualities, so I want to clarify that I'm referring to the latter. A great article I found that unpacks what the authors call New Age self-help rhetoric characterizes the movement as follows: a mingling of Eastern and Western spiritual traditions that centers on individual spiritual growth and holistic conceptions of the universe. New Agers tend to see everything as connected and tend to focus on self-help and other healing practices to improve themselves and, by extension, as per their metaphysical worldview, their lives. You may be starting to see how individualism comes in here. To put it more clearly and succinctly than I ever could, allow me to momentarily give the floor over to TikTok user Darian O'Reilly, who explains the ideological overlap between alt-right politics and New Age hippies.
I just watched a video of a woman talking about how alt-righters and hippies have somehow converged ideologically. And this is something I've witnessed a lot in the communities that I've been a part of. And I just wanted to share the reason why I think. So New Agers are obsessed with the individual and eating the right foods and buying the right whole grain hemp things and just living a lifestyle of purity and connection to nature that will help them to achieve some sort of state of enlightenment. And right-wingers are obsessed with the individual doing the right kind of labor and the right kind of effort to achieve the American dream. So both are about kind of being the right kind of cogs in a capitalist system to achieve something better than what they have. Individual ascendance is what connects.
And that brings us back full circle style to Ralph Smart.
I'm living the lifestyle of the 1%. I'm in the 1% club, deep divers. Do you know how to get into the 1% club? You gotta do what the other 99% of the population are not willing to do. Are you willing to go the extra mile? Are you willing to create over 3,000 videos like Ralph Smart just to make your dream happen? Deep divers, are you ready to do the work?
There isn't a whole lot of biographical information about Ralph Smart available online, so I don't know much about his background. But Ralph seems to be living a great life, and it seems like he more or less built it for himself. In his videos, he likes to remind his viewers that he lives a life of freedom doing what he loves, which is inspiring people and spending lots of time out in nature. He also points out explicitly that his freedom and happiness are connected to his finances. He's not tied to a job he hates, and he's earned enough money through YouTube and his books to be able to do pretty much whatever he wants. This is all great, and I have no doubt that Ralph's determined mindset is a major factor that helped him get to where he is. I'm going to take a moment now to play the clips from earlier with a bit more context so you can get a sense of the logic behind some of his bolder statements.
A lot of people write to me, they're like, Ralph, life isn't fair. Like, how come people get to do what they love and I'm just here stuck in a dead-end job? I absolutely hate it. Hold it right there. I chose this life and you chose that life. The wealth mindset begins when you realize you are responsible for where you place yourself and where you find yourself and the life you're living today. Wealthy people provide value for other people. Wealthy people provide a service. Like I told you, be of service. Every single day, instead of asking yourself, how can I make $1 million, Ralph? Ask yourself, how can I serve 1 million people? Gratitude is linked to wealth. If you're always complaining, I hate my job, I hate this, I hate that, how will you ever expect to feel better about yourself? You gotta start saying, thank you, universe, for another day of that. Woo! Good ass prana, baby. Start realizing you can be a creator, a co-creator of the life you want. But you're gonna have to stop feeling like a victim of circumstance.
It's important to point out that Ralph's reasoning is informed by something called the law of attraction. The law of attraction is associated with the New Thought movement, which goes back to the 19th century and which overlaps a lot with New Age spirituality, but it was popularized further in 2006 by the documentary film The Secret, a documentary that Wikipedia calls pseudoscientific. The central claim of the film, also according to Wikipedia, is that everything one wants or needs can be satisfied by believing in an outcome, repeatedly thinking about it, and maintaining positive emotional states to attract the desired outcome. So, this is what Ralph is referring to when he talks about attracting this or that and manifesting wealth or abundance. Just like I'm not here to attack Ralph's character, I'm not here to invalidate his beliefs either. I think, magical thinking aside even, that it makes sense that maintaining a positive attitude can affect outcomes in a very real way. Having a positive outlook can help open a person's mind to possibilities, while negativity does tend to narrow our focus and prevent us from seeing our full range of options. It's also reasonable to say that dooming can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. But whether or not you believe in the law of attraction, one thing's for sure. A person's thoughts are not the only factor in determining an outcome. We can think as positively as we please about a job application, but if another applicant has an in with the boss, the person with the connection is more likely to get the job. We can try attuning our frequency to help our business venture succeed, but if a pandemic hits and grinds commerce to a halt in our area, no amount of visualizing will bring customers back in. Perhaps this is why Ralph participates in COVID minimization and denialism. All these safety precautions do infringe on individual freedom, but that's a topic for another time. This is all to say that buying fully into the empowering but individualistic ideology that Ralph and other New Age figureheads preach neglects a very real dimension of existence. That dimension is the material one. People's material circumstances and the opportunities that those circumstances either open up or close off. It's all well and good to encourage middle-class folks to be smart about their money, their time, and their mindset, but Ralph's advice sounds really different if you imagine it aimed at a person whose family has been living in poverty for generations. A believer in New Thought might say that individual poor people can pull themselves up by their bootstraps if they just wake up. But would our current economy and job market be able to support the newfound success of millions of awakened minimum wage workers? Those numbers don't exactly pan out, do they? I'm generalizing here, and I'm sure this doesn't apply to everyone, but I've observed that a lot of New Agers tend to chafe a lot with politics. Maybe it's to avoid conflict, because revealing one's political allegiance can be pretty dicey in some situations, but I don't see politics explicitly discussed in a lot of New Age spaces, and I get the sense that many New Agers aren't particularly politically literate. For a lot of us, it might be because we feel plugged into a sort of divine order that transcends the need for politics, and so we would rather ignore them as much as possible. A lot of the time, they're nothing but frustrating and depressing, so who could blame us? But the problem with that mindset is that, as controversial socialist streamer Vosh likes to say, politics is dumb but very important. At the core of what I'd like to argue in this video is that many influential New Age figureheads fail to synthesize politics with the ideology they preach. The issue with this is twofold. First, when they fail to connect their moral and spiritual ideology with existing political ideology, they rob a huge force of good of millions of potential activists. Second, their silence about and/or ignorance to the structural issues behind economic exploitation reinforces the status quo and implicitly victim blames the economic underclass for their own exploitation. Honestly, a couple of years ago, I was part of the problem. I would ignore engaging with politics as much as possible without actually living under a rock. I've always had strong moral feelings about justice and human rights, and I grew up in what I viewed as a left-wing family, so I naturally gravitated towards progressive politics. I'm in the US, so for me that meant voting Democrat and favoring the most progressive Democratic candidates. At the same time, though, anytime I engaged with political content, I would get so overwhelmed by the amount of bullshit involved. Not to sound bratty and Caulfield-esque, but to me, politicians seemed like a big bunch of phonies. Candidates and elected officials put on crowd-pleasing masks, and that can really make them feel inauthentic on a gut level. There's also a lot of performativity involved in politics, for both the candidates themselves and the vast infrastructure that props up our political system. Also, I was kind of a New Ager. I didn't start out that way. I grew up in a secular household, rejected organized religion, and like I said earlier, I considered myself an atheist for much of my teenage and young adulthood. But when I was in my early 20s, I had a mystical experience under the influence of LSD. In those moments, I understood at a felt and fundamental level that everything in existence was connected, and that therefore everything in existence was an inseparable part of the same whole. To me, that knowledge and the feeling of being cradled by the universe that accompanied it amounted to that which to this day is my understanding of God. It was this experience that sort of led me down the New Age pipeline. The numinous experience I just described was aligned with that holistic conception of the universe idea I mentioned earlier. I had this felt experience of belief, and New Age spaces seemed to hold that same belief, so I gravitated towards them out of a desire to learn more and go deeper. Something else that was going on for me at roughly the same time was that I was in the process of totally changing my life. For my first 25 years, I was completely bogged down by mental illness, and it was limiting me and making me miserable, as it does. Not too long after I had my spiritual revelation, I started seeing a really good therapist. She helped me heal a lot of my issues, and in the few years that followed, I saw firsthand how possible it is for a person to improve their life by doing work on themselves. This idea, you may recognize, is quite in line with the individual spiritual growth half of New Age ideology. By doing the therapeutic work which could accurately be described that way, I changed my situation, gained a sense of empowerment, and got back in touch with the feeling that I could do anything I set my mind to. That idea, that a person can do anything they set their mind to, is endemic to New Age ideology. On the surface, it's great, and it makes sense. I do believe that, in many circumstances, a person can improve their situation with determination and hard work. But what New Age ideology doesn't recognize is that the playing field isn't even. Few of you will probably be surprised by the fact that the bulk of New Agers are middle-class white women. The image we get when we think of New Agers is usually one such woman, wearing harem pants and crystals, meditating with a Tibetan singing bowl surrounded by incense. In fact, privilege is a feature that predisposes people to resonate with New Age ideals. Again, I'm speaking generally, and this won't be true across the board, as evinced by Ralph Smart being a black man, but the blind spots of a privileged person line up pretty neatly with the blind spots of New Age ideology. Quoting another source in part, Young and Reynolds write the following: New Age discourse appears customized for the life worlds of the disaffected but educated who are looking for something better than the rest of society and have the economic and educational capital to be able to do so through elective consumption. Often New Age movement participants are middle-class, well-educated, female, and work in the service sector. Which, yes, hi, that's me! Young and Reynolds go on to say that New Age ideology reinforces neoliberal individualism and neglects the realities of economic and political power. Although New Ageism appears to be politically, ideologically, and socially resistant to capitalism, it too is about choices and is easily contained within a capitalist society. The commodification of personal growth and self-empowerment is thus a primary characteristic of New Age culture. As Moskowitz observes, the New Age movement fits quite nicely with contemporary American society's obsession with achieving individual happiness and a culture of self-help consumption, with its reality television confessionals, self-help books, and advice columns. Here's what it comes down to. I'm white, I'm straight and cis passing, and I come from a middle-class background. In this case, that means that if I ever encountered an extraordinary economic failure, my family would have been able to rescue me by providing a safety net. This is all to say that I've always lived feeling physically safe. I've never had to be afraid that a bad interaction with a cop could result in my death. I've never faced a threat of violence due to my gender presentation, and I've never faced an immediate possibility of eviction or homelessness. Believe me, I've had my struggles, and many of them have been connected to my assigned gender, but like I said, I was able to work through them with a good therapist. And by the way, access to therapy or any kind of life coaching is itself a privilege. I'm pointing all this out because these are the structures in my life that allowed me to have an empowered experience of changing my life. I'm not saying that there are some people who could never empower themselves due to their positionality. What I am saying is that the more identity-based factors you have working against you, the harder it's going to be to feel empowered. Racism, sexism, hetero and cis normativity, ableism, etc. are all factors in how comfortable a person's life can be, but all of those factors can and often do impact a person's financial situation, and that's the area about which New Agers are most ignorant. When New Agers preach their individualist gospel and saying that anyone can manifest abundance, they're implicitly saying that if someone doesn't or can't do that, it's their own fault for having the wrong mindset or not attuning their frequency properly. Equally horrific is the idea that if a person has something horrible or abusive happen to them, they attracted it in some way. I get what people are going for when they say this, but it sounds really, really bad. I think it's important to speak directly to anyone watching this who may believe in the law of attraction. Let's say it's unambiguously true. Even so, plenty of people either don't know about it or don't believe in it. Do those people deserve to suffer just because they haven't come around to your worldview? Or alternatively, is it the responsibility of people in a better position to help lift them up by any means necessary? Finally, wouldn't having a more robust social safety net be a great way to address that? Just like any person or group of people who hasn't been bread-pilled, many New Agers don't consider that there are viable options that aren't free market capitalism, and some of them probably strongly believe that there aren't any. In this vacuum of awareness, they don't consider that the current system is exploitative by its very nature. Reinforcing this ignorance is the fact that so many New Age gurus have an incentive to keep buying into capitalism, the incentive being that they're making bank on people listening to them preach. If you buy into capitalism by default, and you find yourself in a position where you've self-actualized to the point where you're making tons of money doing something you love, aren't you going to naturally believe you earned it? And wouldn't you, having empowered yourself to your current position, want to tell the world that they can too? It makes sense, and it has a name. It's called survivorship bias. That's why, in a way, I don't blame Ralph Smart for the part he's playing in this whole mess. I do blame him for spreading nonsense about the COVID vaccine, but not necessarily for the law of attraction stuff. What these New Age gurus fail to realize, though, is that by preaching their message, they're reinforcing to a group of privileged people that our economic system is fair. Some people are born into incredible wealth and can take endless risks without fear. Others live in constant threat of eviction, whether or not they take any risks. Some people literally don't work and earn tens of thousands of dollars every month in passive income because they own property. Other people have 3 jobs, work 60 hours a week, and make under $25K a year. A New Age guru might say that the 3-job person can learn a new skill in their rare downtime and climb the social ladder, but even if they do, someone still needs to work those 3 shitty jobs for miserable pay. The New Age system of personal ascendance requires that an underclass bear the brunt so that they and other people in the same class can live comfortably and even luxuriously. Capitalism depends on an underclass. The New Age complicity with capitalism is tacit complicity with the underclass's economic exploitation and abuse. New Agers don't worship Jesus like Christians do, but they probably believe he was a pretty good dude. What would Jesus think about this mindset? Isn't compassion a spiritual virtue? If we're all one and all the same, how can anyone justify their privileged position while even one other person is still suffering? Ralph Smart preaches about veganism, which means he cares about animals' lives. Why doesn't he also use his platform to, for example, preach about taxing the rich to get homeless people off the streets? New Agers don't talk about this oversight. It's between the lines of their rhetoric of personal empowerment, and I'm sure many don't even consider it directly. What they do talk about, though, is a shadowy group of elites who pulls the strings of the world from behind the scenes. Sometimes it's lizard people, sometimes it's the Illuminati, sometimes it's a secret government, and sometimes it's just a mysterious cabal.
The inorganic ones, their time is up right now.
Well, guess what? They're right. There is a group of people controlling everything, but it's not in the shadows. It's out in the open. And that group of people are billionaires. Perhaps because doing so would undermine their worldview, New Agers don't make this connection, instead building stories to explain their correct but misattributed intuitions about power imbalance and government control. Another way that New Age ideology overlaps with that of the alt-right is in its welcoming of conspiracy theories, but that's a topic for another video. Before I wrap this thing up, I want to revisit the subject of Ralph Smart one final time, because I want to be really clear about where I personally land when it comes to him. I do think that his contribution to the spread of conspiracy theories is harmful, but I also think he believes everything he says, and sometimes there's no talking someone out of that. I think he perpetuates a toxic individualism that primes people to blame the victims of economic exploitation, but I also think he's on the more benign end of these attitudes. He does dispense advice about how to manifest wealth, but that's not his entire focus, and he doesn't charge money for manifestation courses or anything like that. There are other folks in the spiritual community, or adjacent to it, that are much more personally exploitative about it, but once again, that's a subject for another video. So, what do we do with all this? I would hope that any New Agers who made it this far into my video will consider the implications of the ideology they've been buying into. A lot of New Agers have beautiful visions of a utopian future, where we live in harmony with the earth and each other, and where we return to a sense of community and everyone has what they need. Can I suggest perhaps that what they've been envisioning is some form of anarchy or communism? If New Agers are so in favor of self-actualization, why not advocate for social programs that will make it more possible for everyone to self-actualize? Let's put a political name to it so we can unite in solidarity and make it known to the powers that be, the cabal, that we're not happy with the status quo, even if it benefits some of us individually. For anyone watching this who isn't a leftist, I don't want to scare you off with what you may perceive to be extreme ideas. As evinced by all the infighting, different leftists envision different solutions to our collective economic problems, but what we all agree on is that it's a problem. You don't have to think we need to abolish all money and go full-on communist to get on board. Just recognizing there's a problem is a start. If you made it to the end, thanks for watching. Have you had any run-ins with New Age circles? I'd love to hear your thoughts on my argument or about your experiences down in the comments. Over the years that I've spent in New Age circles, I've built up a lot of critical thoughts about some of the most prominent online figureheads. If you're interested in hearing me dive deeper into Infinite Waters and his messages, as well as those of some others like Spirit Science and Teal Swan, let me know. My aim isn't to stir the pot or take them down, but rather apply a critical lens to the stuff they do and say. If you want to know when I put out another video like this, consider subscribing. I also make content about other things like the education system and psychedelic drugs. Although I may wish we weren't, we are still living under capitalism, and on that note, I'm excited to announce that I've recently launched a Patreon. If you like what I do and have the means to do so, I hope you'll consider becoming a patron. Memberships start at $1 a month, and depending on the tier you join, you can get access to exclusive content like polls, behind-the-scenes footage, PDFs of my scripts, and access to my Discord server. Don't feel obligated, but if you do decide to join, it'll help me improve my videos and keep growing my channel. If you can't spare the cash but want to support me, subscribing, sharing, and hitting the like button are all great ways to do that. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.